Leadership Preparation Webinar Series: School Leaders' Role in Allocating School Resources to Support Student and School Needs, Part 2. The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement is comprised of an executive director reporting to the Assistant State Superintendent, coordinators for school improvement, academic improvement, and leadership development, as well as leadership specialists. Our office has three main goals: fostering the growth of effective leaders, ensuring valid and reliable evaluations, and raising the quality of education. We provide targeted professional learning experiences and resources to equip current and future leaders with the skills and knowledge required for successful school and district leadership. We oversee the development and implementation of Maryland's teacher and principal evaluation system. Training, guidance, and support is provided to local school systems in the implementation of fair and valid evaluations. Lastly, we provide customized professional learning experiences and support informed by data and grounded in effective practices to improve school performance. To earn continuing professional development credit, in order to receive 1 credit, you must view 5 webinars, including Part 1 and Part 2. Additionally, you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to receive 2 CPD credits, you must watch all the webinars in the series, including Part 1 and Part 2. Then you will complete 3 hours of experiences per webinar to include any pre-work, participant guides with the webinar, and extension activities. In order to submit your materials, please complete the Google form found in the description below the video. Meet the presenters. For this presentation, we partnered with Wested and Associates, featuring Amy Evan, Senior Research Associate at Wested, and Jason Willis, Director of Strategy and Performance at Wested.
Welcome back to School Leaders' Role in Allocating School Resources to Support Student and School Needs. This is part 2 in the 2-part series. Hi, my name is Amy Evan, and I'm a Senior Research Associate at Wested. I was joined by my colleague Jason Willis for part 1. During this webinar, you'll spend the time practicing allocating resources, including how to think flexibly and creatively about resources to support your priorities, especially now, during a time of COVID. This is so crucial. During part 2, we will really dive into the doing. How do we allocate operational resources to align with data-informed priorities? We'll do some practice with making those decisions today. So where do we start? As we heard from Jason in part 1, school districts require human in terms of time and talent and financial resources to operate effectively, to deliver high-quality instruction and provide high-quality, effective learning opportunities to students. However, in every state, district, and school, resources are limited, so the challenge is to make every dollar count. While we know sufficient resources are necessary for quality schooling, the process by which we use the resources to support specific educational outcomes is also essential. Aligning resources refers to giving deliberate attention to how resources are used and applying basic knowledge and management practices to ensure that resources are used effectively for the intended purposes. Schools that maximize the use of resources spend the right dollars on the right things at the right time. But getting everything right is a process that begins with overcoming the uneasiness we as educators often experience when the topic of money is discussed. So today we're going to put at the very heart of our decision-making student needs. And in order to determine what those needs may be, we'll create a resource allocation map that will help you to address the highest priority need, or in essence, as you saw in part 1, you're creating your own shopping list. Will you be buying celery or M&Ms? if you remember back in part 1, Simon Sinek's video on the celery test. So just as we started in part 1, put yourself in the shoes of the leader. You can decide if you want to be the leader of your current school or the leader of a fictitious school located in the appendix of your workbook. If you choose to use your own data, you'll want to have available the following: the last benchmark or standardized assessment information, and that's fine if the information you gather is from last year. That will be incredibly helpful. Your budget, a list of staff that you currently employ, including their qualifications, and that of your local school system. The list of programs and interventions. And I wouldn't worry so much about that right this second, because we'll talk a little bit more about what we need to make some decisions around the interventions and programs. But we're going to ask you to think about, as you go through this series of exercises, what further information would also be useful to have to help you make some of these decisions. Because again, this is just a practice. It's really to help you go through the motion and help you go through the process. And then at the very end, we'll do a reflection on what further information you may want when you do go through the actual process of making some of these decisions. During this session, you're going to create, as I mentioned earlier, a resource alignment plan map. Ideally, and again, I can't stress this enough, these activities are just a practice. We would strongly recommend, because they are much more beneficial and meaningful, if you do them with your leadership team instead of just you as the lone leader. So we would encourage you to go through these activities with the mindset of, how can I then guide my team in going through these activities when we do them, quote unquote, for real. And then, you can also think of this as your pitch to your school board or your pitch to your supervisor. So there's lots of different ways that you can use what we'll be talking about today. So let's get started. After going through your outcome information, whether they be student standardized scores, benchmark scores, or if you're using the XYZ scenarios in your workbook, then decide what are your student needs. Based on your data and what you know about your students and your school and your staff, you may end up with several high priority needs. Choose one of these high priority needs. This is really going to be your why, your anchor that will drive the rest of your decisions. Some examples of a high priority need might be, by the time students reach third grade, less of them can read on a grade level. And so my priority would be to get more students reading by the end of third grade. That would be my goal. Or our 8th grade students' writing stamina and quality has greatly decreased over the last 3 years, and they are less likely to be ready for 9th grade expectations. That could be another high priority need. Another high priority need might be around our students who receive special education services. Their attendance rates are 15 percentage points below students who do not receive special education services. So again, identify the high priority need you'd like to focus on, and then write a SMART goal aligned to that need. So if your need is around 8th grade students' writing stamina, what could be a SMART goal to help build up their stamina and quality? What might you want to accomplish this year? And then reflect. Based on this need, how will you address this? Is it really about raising student achievement as evidenced by state assessment? Or is this about long-term improvement in student outcomes? So once you've decided your goal, think about what actions or strategies you are looking to put in place to achieve that goal. Again, we're always working backward from the high prioritized need to the goal, and then thinking about what strategies you may want to put in place to address that goal. So again, if your need is around 8th grade writing stamina and quality, and your goal is to increase that, what areas of their writing skill set are you looking to increase? What might be some ways you can go about doing that? And how should those actions be sequenced? So really think about your need, your goals, and what as a school, or what as an 8th grade team, or what as a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team you would like to put in place in order to address that need. And you'll use the resource allocation map to really hone in on what those actions, goals, and needs might be. And again, this is sequenced and visualized in a particular way so that you're always going back to and making sure that your actions, your strategies are helping you meet the goal to address the need. So before we make any decisions about resources in particular, whether that be staff, whether that be how staff are spending their time, whether that be about what investments, what funding we will put in place, we need to take stock. Because as a principal, you're going to get your budget, and none of the cells look like they're allowed to make any changes, but you actually have more decision making at your discretion than you may think. And really, resource allocation is two parts. Part one is, do I have what's necessary in order to accomplish my goal and address my need? Do I have the right people with the right skills who have the right amount of time and whatever monetary resources might be needed? If not, how do I get those resources? Resources are the one thing we never feel like we have enough. We never have enough time, we never have enough people, we never have enough money, and we're not likely to get more, even with partial or full funding of the Kirwan Commission, even with Title I money, even with other title money, and especially not in a recession. So you'll never really ever feel like you have enough, but that just means we have to be really thoughtful and strategic about how we go about using what we have. So this first part, again, is really determining what you need and whether you have it. Maybe you don't. The second part is about cutting the fat, getting rid of what's not needed. And this part, I have to say, we hardly ever do this. We continue to pile on, but we rarely take stock and then take things off the table. And part of resource allocation is also resource reallocation. So just because we've allocated resources to something doesn't necessarily mean that we have to continue. So if the first part is determining what you need, then the second part is determining what you don't. What isn't working? Who isn't working in their current position or maybe at all? And then being really clear about how time is spent. Do we even know how time is being spent in school? So if you have Netflix, you may have seen Marie Kondo's show called Tidying Up. And I have to tell you a little story. So my husband and I, we have two kids, a boy and a girl, and they each have their toys and bikes and just stuff. Oh, so much stuff. And about a year ago, I thought, oh my gosh, we need a bigger house. The kids are getting bigger. Their stuff is getting bigger. Maybe we just need like one more bedroom or maybe a garage. But honestly, that wasn't in the cards. So we did the next best thing. We tried to find room in our own house. We went room by room. We took stuff to Goodwill and donated it to Purple Heart, and also threw away quite a bit because it wasn't able to be recycled. But honestly, we didn't make much of a dent. So Marie Kondo's idea is, instead of having you go closet by closet and let's say clean out your clothes, she has you go through your stuff by category. So you pile all of your clothes together from all your little nooks and crannies, because we all have them, and then go through. So for my husband, golf clothes in our daughter's closet, winter sweaters in our son's drawer, jackets in the basement crawl space. And for me, the leather pants from college in the attic that I'll never get rid of. But the decisions then to keep or to toss or to donate tend to be a bit easier when your stuff is all piled together in their ridiculous glory. So we're going to ask you to try to do the same thing. Instead of going grade by grade or teacher by teacher or class by class, try pulling all of your math interventions, all of your reading interventions together. Take stock, put them all together and evaluate what's working, what's not. you're likely to find all kinds of goodies and a lot that you can trim when you put it all together. Because maybe you're not using some interventions because you really like the ones you're using, but perhaps they're not working all that well. Or maybe if you're elementary, you have some interventions that you're using just in second grade or third grade, but they can be used for multiple grades, more grades than what they're using them for. And so it might be easier to just have a couple than to have multiple duplicate interventions. We're going to ask you to turn to your workbook, if you haven't already, to do your resource allocation map and start at Table 1, Current and Selected Interventions and Strategies. Make a list of all the ELA math, other content, and other student supports, things like PBIS, that are being used in your school. And then, just so we don't trim too much, in parentheses, next to the name of the intervention, indicate whether this is a Tier 1, if you're using multi-tiered systems of supports, a Tier 1, which would be used universally, Tier 2, used to target specific students or skills, or Tier 3, which are used mostly for intensive intervention purposes. And this will really help ensure that when you look across, you're seeing what you have across content and tier and not lopping off needed interventions for different purposes. But go ahead and take stock. What's working? What's not? What's evidence-based? What's not? Indicate what you want to keep. Either put in the last column what you'd like to continue using, or just draw an arrow if you don't want to write it out again. And then take stock of your staff. Fill out your staff profile. Either, again, and all of these are with your own school or with the XYZ scenario in the back of your workbook in the appendices. So take a look at and sort of map out what staff you have, their qualifications, and then how are your staff supported? Use Table 2 to help you organize your current supports for teachers. So once you've done that, it's time to make some decisions. And we invite you to play a little game called Budget Hold'em. It's a game that is used with schools and districts across the country about how to make strategic resource allocation decisions. In the game, we'll make some decisions about how to invest your resources and how to make the difficult decisions of what resources to reallocate or cut. So you'll answer questions such as, how will I make sure that my actions can be implemented? How will I make sure that my vision, my goals are supported and not just written on paper? So the point of the game is to help you think about time, staff, funds, and make some long-term decisions to best serve your students. There's 2 ways you can play. You can use your workbook and follow along the directions in there, or you can log on to the link in your workbook, www.ersstrategies.org/Hold'em, hold hyphen hyphen school hyphen level. And that will take you to the online game. If you play online, you also have the added benefit of having to keep a balanced budget. So if you do play online, go ahead and plug in under Get Started Now the budget scenarios target you think you will likely be facing. So you can do a negative, you can do a positive percentage of where you think your school budget will be. And then it's up to you how you want to go about doing that. You can either be realistic and plug in a budget cut, which we will likely be facing, or you can, have fun and give yourself a budget surplus. Then draw your hand. So there are 2 different types of cards, whether you're playing online or in the workbook: investments and savings. So wherever you make an investment, you always have to cut something. And the goal is to create a quote unquote hand of investment and saving options that will both meet your budget target, but also maximize the way resources are used to improve student performance. So go ahead and go through some of the cards. Before you start, you may want to think about where you want to add some investments. And I'll show you the resource allocation map in a second, because we're going to use the decisions you make during Budget Hold'em to add to our map. But to start, you may want to think about a few areas to invest your resources. Maybe you want to build up your adult culture. Maybe there's a need for collaborative work among your staff and professional growth if your teachers are becoming more senior. Maybe you want to work on curriculum and instruction and assessment or personalized learning, or really working on school culture and community and social emotional learning. Or perhaps you want to make some investments or really do some work in talent management or teacher leadership. So, depending on where you like to hone in, given your need, given your goals, given your actions, review the investment strategies within whichever priorities, or not. You can choose to read all the cards and read all the investment ideas and make some decisions from there. But what we would really push you to consider is to ensure that the investment decisions you're making do actually help you address the need by meeting your goal. And if you work through the investments and you decide to tweak your goal, that's fine. If you decide to tweak your actions, that's okay. That's part of this process. Just because what you laid out as a goal and actions initially, they're not stuck in stone. We would, though, suggest that if your prioritized need changes, that it be based on the actual data from either your school or your XYZ scenario, whichever you're using, and not from the investment opportunities. So try to stay true to your need, the need that you identified in your data, but feel free to use the game and the cards and the ideas to help you tweak your actions and your goals if needed. So as you go through, it may be tempting to choose multiple investments, but the point of the exercise is really to explore your options, select 1 to 3 investment options that best support your plan. The information, if you're looking in your workbook, in the investment considerations column, or you can see this when you play online by clicking the Y button on the card, will provide you further detail about what's needed to make that investment option successful, such as specific roles of staff, specific training, specific time allocations. So really, once you've honed in on a couple of investment options that you would like to pursue, we'd really suggest you think through the full implementation repercussions of that investment option. And then once you've chosen your investments, think about how the investment supports the interventions and strategies that you already have in place, the things that you've already decided you want to use. And then after you've done that, consider 1 to 2 saving options. If you're in your workbook, those are in table 4 to implement or offset the costs of the investment options. Once you've made some of these decisions from your resource allocation, you'll want to add these investments and your savings to your plan. Your full resource allocation plan map would look like this. So again, your need, your goal, your action strategies, and then under each of those, what investments you will make, what savings you will create. So those would be things that you're cutting in order to make those investments to ensure the actions you're looking to implement are successful, drive improvement to meet your goal, and address your need. So that's your full resource allocation plan map. So why don't you go ahead and play either in your workbook and come back when you're ready to do some reflection on how things went. So when we say we're aligning resources, we're being really deliberate about how things like time are used. People are allocated and used to the best of their ability to meet our students' needs. And how are we using funds strategically? Why do we need to be so specific about this? Well, schools that do this well are able to identify, as we mentioned in the beginning, the right resources to spend on the right things at the right time. These schools have what they need to drive improvement toward what matters most for their students and their school. In other words, there are linkages between capacity, implementation, and resources. So let's reflect. How did it go? Keep in mind, there's no right or wrong answers. These are really hairy issues. They're really tough decisions. They're multifaceted, but only get solved once you have a sense of what's needed. So the P-Cell mission vision, what did you focus on? What was your why? Did it drive the decisions throughout your plan? When you go back and look at your investments and your actions and your goal and your need, are they all aligned and driving back toward addressing that need? Did you feel frustrated by the lack of information that you had at your disposal? What other information would be really helpful? What questions did you want to know the answers to before making your decisions? As Jason mentioned in part 1, as a leader, we need to make sure that when we're making decisions about resources, we're thinking in terms of equity and outcomes, not equity and resources. In many schools, resources are allocated based on formulas that prioritize equal distribution. For example, the same amount per student or teacher, etc., on the basis that that kind of distribution is the fairest. But that isn't necessarily equity, that's equality. If a school is striving to attain equal outcomes for students, we really need to make decisions and determine whether or not equal distribution of resources truly supports student outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. Achieving equity of outcomes often requires differences in resources. That's why we have multi-tiered systems of support. And lastly, something we didn't necessarily discuss is how do you engage central office in this work? How do you have conversations? What might you ask of your central office team to help make some of these decisions or to help you align to what some of the district priorities might be? So we hope you enjoyed this 2-part series and feel free to ask any questions. You also have a very robust and comprehensive resource cadre of staff and support mechanisms available to you, and we would highly encourage you use them in all their glory. Take care.
The Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement would like to thank you for participating in the Leadership Preparation virtual webinar series. We hope you found this particular webinar informative and beneficial to your work as you prepare as a leader. To access the webinar series and find additional resources, please visit the Maryland Resource Hub. The Maryland Resource Hub can be located at marylandresourcehub.com. That is MarylandResourcehub.com. We appreciate your feedback and would ask that you take a moment at this time to complete the SurveyMonkey link or use the QR code. The feedback that you provide to us will inform our work in the office as we develop additional resources to support you in the field. Again, thank you very much for your time in completing the feedback. As a reminder, the continuing professional development credits are available to you for this Leadership Preparation webinar series. To receive 1 credit, you will need to view 5 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience for the webinar. That would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar, and completing the participant's guide, as well as extension activities related to the webinar. To receive 2 CPD credits, you will watch all 10 webinars, parts 1 and 2, and complete 3 hours of experience per webinar. Again, it would include the pre-work, viewing the webinar and completing the participant's guide while watching, and extension activities related to the webinar. After you have completed the work, you will then submit all of the materials to the Google Form link listed. If you need to contact us with any questions for any reason at the Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement, you can contact Ed Mitzel, Executive Director, at edmund.mitzel@maryland.gov. That is edmund und.mitzel@maryland.gov, or Dr. Lori Ellis, Coordinator for Leadership Development, at lori.ellis@maryland.gov. That is LORI.ELLIS@maryland.gov.